There are tons of obstacles that can derail a movie, and it can happen at any time. Saying the wrong thing to the wrong person can sometimes be all it takes to get shut down. Other productions are difficult from the get-go, with cast and crew battling the elements and each other over the course of a shoot. And even if everything goes smoothly during production, some last-minute players call foul and interrupt the whole game. These are Screen Rant's 10 most controversial movies you almost didn't get to see. The Wolf of Wall Street. When Scorsese sets out to make a movie about excess, he thinks big. The Wolf of Wall Street is a twisted ode to extravagance, crowded with morally reprehensible conduct. And while lots of people were blown away by the spectacle, some audience members resented it. The filmmaker argues that the movie is supposed to be upsetting. Not sure what to be upset about? Take your pick. Sex, drugs, religion, politics, there's something for everyone. The movie underwent massive cuts in order to be deemed appropriate for showing in some countries, while others like Malaysia, Kenya, and Nepal have banned it outright. Despite the controversy, the movie did well at the box office and was nominated for a slew of trophies come award season. The Da Vinci Code. It seems like there are some stories filmmakers are just fundamentally not allowed to mess with. Ideas so sacred, they've been passed on from generation to generation and form the basis of many religions. Dan Brown's novel The Da Vinci Code shakes up the story of Jesus. And when it turned into a full-blown phenomenon after Ron Howard brought it to the big screen, some audiences were pissed. They argued that the film was an attack and that because of its popularity, it was spreading misinformation on a massive scale. Some countries required a disclaimer reminding everyone that the story was a work of fiction. Other countries like Egypt, Pakistan, and the Philippines had it flat out banned on the charge of blasphemy. Jaws. Simply put, Jaws is a movie that came dangerously close to not getting made. And while the final result makes for a terrifying movie, the real-life implications of the story they sought to tell was the real nightmare. Shot during the age of practical effects, the entire production revolved around 3 robotic sharks named Bruce that were high maintenance to say the least. Their internal mechanisms had to be replaced often thanks to the salt water. The Bruces also had to be repainted every single day and sank more often than they worked. The shoot was behind schedule, over budget, and director Steven Spielberg worried that if he ever left the set, he might be too traumatized to ever return. Shooting in Martha's Vineyard proved to be a challenge in itself, as the community had incredibly high aesthetic standards, which often left crew members scrambling to set up and tear down all the sets every single day. Apocalypse Now. The filming of Apocalypse Now was so out of control that the documentary about how the film was made, Hearts of Darkness, is almost more interesting than the film itself. Francis Ford Coppola and company fought an uphill battle from beginning to end. A typhoon destroyed parts of the set, forcing delays in the production. When the shoot resumed after the typhoon, Marlon Brando looked completely different than when he left. He didn't know any of his lines, and the movie was stalled again while he learned them. The original lead, Harvey Keitel, was fired early on and replaced with Martin Sheen, who would later suffer a heart attack while working on the film. Cast and crew were constantly getting sick, and the production even got robbed. Everyone involved suffered somehow, but the end result is one of the greatest movies of all time. Marlon Brando remains less than impressed. The Exorcist. Considered by many to be among the greatest films of all time, The Exorcist has an effect on everyone who discovers it. For the cast and crew, that meant enduring more than a few extreme circumstances. The production was notoriously troubled. At one point or another, the director had pissed off every single actor, on top of freezing them half to death with the Sub-Zero set. Studio bigwigs were convinced the movie would fail and were constantly threatening to pull the plug, but somehow it survived. When it was released in 1973, audiences had never experienced anything like it before. People were vomiting, fainting, and in hysterics because of what they were seeing on screen. Some groups felt the film was spreading pro-Satan sentiments, and Linda Blair received more than one death threat because of it. Borat. You'd be hard-pressed to find a section of society that hasn't been offended by Sacha Baron Cohen at one time or another. It's his shtick. The performer is famous for putting his subjects on the spot, which almost always leads to an uncomfortable situation. The police were called almost 100 times during the filming of Borat, and after its release, the actor's real life got even more tense than his fake one. The majority of the people who appeared in the movie took legal action against him. Some of the film's least liked characters were also its most vocal opponents, and tried to have the DVD release cancelled. The Anti-Defamation League even got involved, characterizing the movie as being anti-Semitic, and the higher-ups in the Kazakh government were furious. At one point, the film was banned in multiple countries, but its restriction has since loosened everywhere except for Russia. Aladdin. Disney has been a constant in discussions about casual racism in children's movies, and there's a seemingly endless amount of conspiracy theories related to every move they make. The studio has released some of the most successful films of all time and have an intensely loyal fan base. That kind of following, coupled with their wholesome kid-friendly branding, comes with a lot of responsibility. And according to the American Arab Anti-Discrimination Committee, Aladdin vilified elements of their culture. They pointed to stereotypical lyrics and whitewashing of Aladdin and Jasmine as evidence. They argued all other citizens looked greedy and villainous. For the video release, Disney changed the offensive lyrics, but the first round of soundtracks still have them.
No matter what anybody says, you'll always be a prince to me.
The Interview. Sometimes a movie makes it all the way through production and gets shut down just before crossing the finish line. Directors Seth Rogen and Evan Goldberg experienced this exact thing with their 2014 offering The Interview. The story follows a TV host, James Franco, and his producer, Seth Rogen, as they travel to North Korea. After the CIA find out the two are going to meet Kim Jong-un, they task the two men with murdering the dictator. As you can probably imagine, when the real Kim Jong-un caught wind of the storyline, he was pretty ticked off, and threatened retaliation if the movie were to be released, arguing that its publicity would be an act of terrorism. Sony databases were hacked shortly after the incident, and hundreds of internal documents were released to the public. Shortly after that, the FBI named North Korea as the country responsible for the leak. Passion of the Christ. Sometimes, no matter how the story is told, someone is going to get mad. Mel Gibson's take on the last 12 hours of Jesus' life is no exception. The Passion of the Christ sparked all sorts of controversy, despite his assertion that he was remaining true to the Gospels. Accused of being excessively violent, critics also claimed the depiction was anti-Semitic, and again, the Anti-Defamation League got involved. Religious leaders argue that filmmakers have an obligation to treat the subject matter with care, given the potential influence of their work. In fact, there are entire rulebooks that govern how religious likenesses should be tailored for the big screen. Gibson has stated that his intention in making the film was to inspire people, but a lot of them were insulted instead. Deadpool. If you're looking for an alternative to the squeaky clean superfolk that have come to dominate the industry over the past few years, Deadpool is the character for you. He's got quick wit and a filthy mouth, and we can think of no one better to play him than Ryan Reynolds. There's a good mix of sex, violence, and curse words, and the movie crosses the line in all categories. While many Western audiences ate it up, the censors in China were not as impressed. It seems the film pushed the envelope a little bit too far and was banned. Deadpool's not alone though. The list of movies banned in China is a pretty long one, and Deadpool isn't the only costume crusader on the list. He joins The Dark Knight and V for Vendetta in the doghouse. Okay, so what do you think of our list? Did we miss any other controversial movies that almost didn't make it to the masses? Tell us about them in the comments below, and make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel for more videos like this one.